Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, English with Archie. Today we are looking at the present perfect continuous. In my last videos, we looked at present perfect simple and we had a quiz to practice the present perfect simple, but now we're looking at the continuous form. So first today we'll look at how do we form it. Then we're going to look at some rules. When do we use the present perfect simple and when do we use the present perfect continuous? And then we're going to compare some present perfect simple and some present perfect continuous sentences and just see how the meaning can change depending which one we use. So, thanks very much for joining me. Let's get started. Okay, so let's look at the present perfect continuous. We're also going to look at when to use the simple and continuous forms. So first of all, how do we form the present perfect continuous? So we use our have or has. Has is for the third person singular, he, she, it. Then been, and then our verb in the ing form. For example, I have been reading my book. I have been reading my book. So have is our auxiliary, then been, and then read in the ing form, reading my book. So this is our positive sentence. Then if we make a negative sentence, we say, I haven't been reading my book. So we put our not in. I haven't been reading my book. And if we make a question, we put have at the beginning. Have you been reading your book? Okay. Now, with the positive, we can do that in two ways. We can contract the I and the have and put I've been reading my book. Okay, and the meaning is the same. I've been reading my book or I have been reading my book. It's more common to contract it because it's quicker. So it's more common to say I've been reading my book. And with the negative form, there are three ways that we can do it. We can say I have not been reading my book, where we don't contract any words. I haven't been reading my book, where we contract have and not to haven't, or I've not been reading my book, where we contract I and have to I've. Now, the most common way is probably number two, I haven't been reading my book, but all three are correct and they all mean the same thing. So let's look at one more verb. So we have another example. So again, now he has been traveling this year. He has been traveling this year. And if we make a negative, he hasn't been traveling this year. And a question, has he been traveling this year? Then we can contract he and has to he's if we want. And that's a little more common to say he's been traveling this year. And again, the negative has three different ways. He has not been traveling this year, he hasn't been traveling this year, and he's not been traveling this year. Okay, they all mean the same, and number two is the most common. He hasn't been traveling this year. Now, let's look at a variety of examples of present perfect continuous sentences. So, I've been studying all day. It's been snowing all week. He hasn't been working here very long. We've been looking for you for hours. And the kitchen lights haven't been working since yesterday. Now, I'm going to show you some sentences, or not finished sentences, and you can finish them with the present perfect continuous. So, for example, you study for hours. So we've got the verb study. So you can make a sentence with the present perfect continuous using the verb study. So I'll give you 5 seconds, and if you want, you can pause the video. Okay? Time's up. You have been studying for hours. Or we can contract you and have and say you've been studying for hours. Next one. He shop since 10 a.m. So our verb shop, turn it into present perfect continuous sentence. 5 seconds. Time's up. he has been shopping since 10 a.m. And we can contract again, he and has, and say he's. He's been shopping since 10 a.m. Next, we cook all morning. So cook, can you turn it into present perfect continuous? 5 seconds. Time's up. We have been cooking all morning. Again, we can say we have or we've. We've been cooking all morning. Next one, I want you to make a question this time. So we've got how long, then our verb live, our subject you, and then in France. So 5 seconds. Pause it if you need to. Time's up. How long have you been living in France? How long have you been living in France? And our last one. So we've got she, run, our verb run, and then I want you to make this a negative sentence. And today. So 5 seconds. Time's up. She hasn't been running today. Or our other options, she has not been running today, or she's not been running today. So that's helping us to learn how to make the present perfect continuous. Now let's look at when do we use the simple and when do we use the continuous forms. So our first rule for present perfect simple is to emphasize the result in the present. So for example, I have lost my diary. So I lost my diary in the past, and the result is I don't have it now. Look at those pretty rose bushes I've planted. So I planted them in the past. I've been planting them for the last 2 hours. And the result is there are pretty rose bushes there that I have now planted. And the last one, you've left the window open again. So here our result is it's cold in here. You've left the window open and it's now very cold. So that's our result. So when we want to emphasize the result of a past action, we usually use the present perfect simple. Now, present perfect continuous, we often use to emphasize the duration or process of something. So emphasize, just to make clear, means to focus on or to make something stronger. And the duration means the amount of time, and the process means the action. So to emphasize the duration or process, for example, the kids have been playing for hours. So here we're emphasizing the duration. We're emphasizing making stronger that they have played for a long time. Okay, it's seemed like a long time. It's been hours. Or we've been walking around the city all day. So again, we're focusing on that duration. The whole day we've been doing this. So the present perfect continuous is great. Now let's look at our second rule for the present perfect simple. A recently completed action. So something that was finished recently. The children have done their homework. So it means they did their homework today and they have finished it just recently. Sometime today, in the last few hours maybe, they have finished their homework. Or the January sales have started. So this week or this month, they have recently started. They started in the past and now it's completed, they have started, and we can go. We can go to the shops, they are open. Now our second rule with the continuous is something that is not finished. So with the simple, we're looking at typically something that's completed, and the continuous something that is not finished, not completed. So he has been watching lots of action movies. So here he will probably watch more action movies. Now if we make a sentence with the present perfect simple and we say he has watched lots of action movies, it suggests that maybe he will now watch different movies, or he's finished watching action movies. But with the present perfect continuous, it suggests that he's still watching them. He's not finished watching them. He's going to probably watch more. Or she hasn't been responding to my messages. So I keep messaging her and she's not responding to my messages. If we use the present perfect simple, she hasn't responded to my messages. It means I sent her 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 messages and she's not responded to those messages. But if I say she hasn't been responding to my messages, it means generally all the messages that I have been sending her and I continue to send her, she has not been responding to. So it's more general and it means the action is continuing. Now, our next present perfect simple rule is permanent situations or long-term situations. So my parents have lived in Birmingham for 8 years. So this is for a long time. We're talking about a very long time, a long duration, for 8 years. Or she hasn't worked for years. Again, we're talking about years. So it's more common to use the present perfect simple. But the present perfect continuous explains a more temporary situation. For example, the woman has been watching the birds all day. The woman has been watching the birds all day. So we're talking about one day, a whole day, but one day, a short time, not years. Or I haven't been working well recently. Again, this could be several days, a week, a month. It's a shorter amount of time. So it's usually we use the present perfect continuous for this. Now, the last one, present perfect simple, the last rule, repeated individual actions or events. So individual actions, individual moments or events that are repeated. So I have been to France 3 times this year. So this is 3 different occasions or times I went to France. I went to France, I came back home. I went to France, I came back home. I went to France, I came back home. So I went 3 times. They are individual visits or trips to France. Or I have pressed the power button twice on my computer, on my phone. I've pressed it twice. So we're talking about numbers, twice, 3 times. These are specific individual events, so we use the present perfect simple. And then continuous, this is similar to the rule, the first continuous rule, to emphasize the process. The kids have been playing for hours. We've been walking around the city all day. It talks about a continuous action, walking around the city for a continuous amount of time. Or the kids have been playing for hours, continuously playing. If we want to say the kids have played 3 football matches, then we use present perfect simple because we're talking about separate events. Another example, if we say about going to France in the present perfect continuous, we need to make it more general, not specific events. So I have been regularly going to France this year. I have regularly been going to France this year. So this talks about the action of going to France, but not about specific times that you've gone to France. So we can use the present perfect continuous in this sentence. So here we're going to look at some sentences where we can compare the present perfect simple. Here we're going to look at some sentences where we can compare the present perfect simple and the present perfect continuous. So, number 1, in the simple, I've learnt French from this book. Now, in this sentence, the rule is emphasize the result in the present. So what's the result? The result is I've learnt French. So it means now I know French. I've finished. So again, we're talking about the end of a process, the result, the outcome. I have now learnt French. So I'm not learning it anymore. I've finished learning French. If we use the continuous, we can say, I've been learning French from this book. So this focuses on the process, the learning of French. So I have been learning French. I started in the past. I have been learning it and I'm still doing it. So again, it focuses on the process and it's not necessarily a completed action. I might still be doing that action. So I'm still learning French with this sentence. Let's look at two more. The children have played for hours. So this is a recently completed action. It sounds like they have finished playing. They recently stopped playing. Okay, but the continuous form, the children have been playing for hours. This emphasizes the duration and it says that it's something unfinished or it's likely that it's not finished. So they're probably still playing. And let's look at one more. In the present perfect simple, the phone has rung twice this evening. So again, repeated individual events. It rang 2 times. First it was mum, then it was the neighbour. So 2 individual events, we have to use the present perfect simple. It has rung 2 times. But the continuous, the phone has been ringing this evening, we can focus on the process, the action, it has been ringing, without saying specifically how many times. This just emphasizes the process. It has been ringing lots generally. So let's look at the last part of the present perfect continuous, the last thing that you need to know, the final rule. So the final rule is we don't use the present perfect continuous with certain verbs. So here are a list of verbs. Now there are some more, but these are the main ones. Okay, so own, belong, arrive, leave, prefer, love, hate, like, understand, know, have, be. We don't use the present perfect continuous with these verbs. So these verbs are usually state verbs, the verbs that we can't use the present perfect continuous with. They're generally not used in continuous form in most tenses. Now sometimes it is possible, but it is rare. With some verbs, it doesn't ever work. So for example, my friend has been arriving for 6 hours. Okay, this sentence, it does not work. It's incorrect. And we could never say has been arriving or have been arriving. Because arrive is a very instantaneous action. Okay, we arrive in a few minutes or in a moment. And the present perfect continuous focuses so much on the duration and the amount of time and the process that it just doesn't make sense in English. But some verbs we can use in the present perfect continuous. For example, it's quite colloquial, but we can say, I have been loving. I have been loving, I've been loving my friend's Instagram posts at the moment. Okay, for example. So this is possible. It's not very common, but it is possible to say. Thanks very much for watching. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, then just let me know in the comments below. And if you want to practice, then why not try writing a present perfect simple and a present perfect continuous sentence. And I will try and get back to you and help you and tell you if it's correct or how to improve it if not. Also, if you're interested in more content like this, then please subscribe. I'll be putting up more grammar videos, more videos with vocabulary, a whole range for you to improve your English. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time on English with Archie. Bye!